For the longest time, my favorite thing out of Detroit was Motown Records. But now, it's pizza. I'd probably fight over the last slice. Ah! It starts with a rectangle crust with crispy, cheesy edges and those racing stripes of sauce. Whatever toppings you want, the dough is airy with a perfect chew. It's one of the easiest pizzas to make at home and definitely worth the hardware to make it.
Starting out, we need to make a dough. Now, I've made a bunch of pizza doughs before, but this one was by far the easiest thanks to the speed of a food processor. If you don't have one, I highly recommend it as it'll make life easier for a lot of recipes. You can also do this in a stand mixer, but the food processor literally took like 30 seconds. And just an FYI, there are a lot of recipes out here for Detroit-style pizza doughs. Some are extensive and they'll use like a 72-hour cold fermentation process, which I've read creates a really good crust. I, however, wanted pizza today, so I'm doing a much quicker version. The difference in this dough and the other pizza styles is the hydration levels. You'll notice that when you make the dough that it is a lot wetter than other doughs, which is exactly what we want. But it won't be wet when we bake it, okay? Also, all my measurements today will be in grams because it creates a way more consistent dough than using measuring spoons and cups. So we'll need 185 grams of warm water coming in at around 110 degrees. Another handy ability of this thermal pin by Thermoworks. I just ran my sink water over the probe until it got to 110 and then I filled up this measuring cup. From there we can measure it out into a container on a scale, so 180 grams of that. And to it, 5 grams of dry active yeast and 5 grams of granulated white sugar for them to feast on. Let it sit for about 5 minutes and you'll notice some foaming up at the top. That is that feasting I'm talking about. For the flour, I'm using a double-aught pizza flour by King Arthur. I believe bread flour is normally used, but I had this on hand already. I wouldn't use a regular all-purpose flour though, as it just won't have the right chew consistency we're looking for. So bread flour or double-aught flour is preferred. And we're going to be using 255 grams of that, and I'm just going to put it directly into my food processor container on the scale. Lastly, 7 grams of salt. I'm using this black garlic salt by Jacobsen, but sea salt is totally fine to use here. I just like to add a little bit more flavor here. After that, 5 minutes is up for the water, sugar, and yeast. Get it combined into your food processor with the flour and the salt. Get the lid on and then pulse for about 30 seconds. And you see just how quickly a dough ball forms when you do it this way. Maybe an extra 15 seconds or so, but that's about it. As I mentioned earlier, this will be a wetter dough than you may have been used to if you've made pizzas at home before. We'll get it out of the food processor along with any of the pieces that may have gotten stuck to the blade and into a very well oiled container where we'll let the dough rise and double in size. And don't be shy with the oil, make sure you get it all coated on the sides too. I flipped the dough over a few times in there to get it coated as well, and now we just leave it out at room temperature and let it do its thing. 2 hours later, it is doubled in size and you can let it go longer if you want to, it'll just get better. Now let's talk sauce. It's so easy. Just buy yourself a good quality kind like this. This is a pizza sauce by Stonewall Kitchen, which is one of my favorites. It's so fresh tasting and it's easy to find online at Amazon, or if you have one of those nicer grocery stores in your neighborhood, like a Vons or a Pavilions or whatever, you can find it there. But online, it'll probably get shipped to you the next day, which is nice. Now, you can make your own pizza sauce if you want to, but I'm already making you buy a food processor, a food scale, a specific type of pan, and all that. Let me cut you a little bit of a break. Speaking of pans, let's talk about it. While my tripod head fails on me without me even noticing. This is a Lloyd Pan. Lloyd. It's the brand that makes a special type of pan called a hard anodized metal pan. They were originally used in Detroit car factories for small parts and pieces, and now they're great for making pizza. It definitely gives the Detroit style pizza its signature crispy crust, so as much as you're probably thinking about that regular old baking pan you have in your cabinet right now, go ahead and buy you one of these because you can make a lot of stuff in it, and trust me, you'll be wanting to make this pizza a lot. Worth the buy, and it's not one of those specialty things that you chuck into a closet and forget forever. This one is 10 by 14 inches, and I know I just said what I said about getting this pan, but if you do happen to have, say, a cast iron pan of the same size and shape, I guess that'll work too. Dark metal is the key, but seriously, get a Lloyd pan. So now we just need to oil this baby up, and I mean a lot of oil. Get the bottom and all the sides all the way up to the top, leaving nothing untouched by oil. Then we'll get our dough out and into the pan, and we'll do an initial stretching of the dough, trying to get it out to the sides as much as possible and evenly distributed. But we're also gonna go back later and stretch it again, so if the dough isn't staying put, don't fret, just do as much as you can, it'll eventually relax. Cover with some plastic wrap touching the surface of the dough and let it hang out for about 20 to 30 minutes. While that sits, I just want to show 2 things I'm using today. This pizza seasoning by King Arthur that I'll dust over the top at the very end, and this Mike's Hot Honey that'll be a sweet and spicy complement to the pepperoni and Calabrese we use on the pizzas. 20 minutes is up, we'll take the plastic wrap off and you'll notice it's much easier to stretch the dough out to the corners, so go ahead and get that taken care of. And then we can start building our pizza. As I mentioned, I've got some Calabrese salami that I'm putting down onto the dough first because I want that greasy goodness to cook into the dough as it bakes. You can also just use giant pepperoni if you want to, I'm just being fancy. Put down as many as you want. I did enough to cover up the dough using a little overlapping. Next is our cheese. Now, if you can get your hand on a block of Wisconsin brick cheese, by all means, that is the ideal cheese and the one they use for the Detroit style pizzas. I'm in LA and can't get it here locally, though I did find out afterwards that I could just have ordered it online and had it shipped pretty quickly, so that's stupid on me. So I'll most likely do that next time, but for now, I'm using a combination of mozzarella and Monterey Jack cheese, about 4 ounces each, and I freshly grated this so it would melt better. If you haven't heard it 1,000 times by now, the pre-shredded bag stuff is coated in a type of powder that prevents it from sticking together, but it also prevents from getting that good melt, and we really need that for this pizza. So getting some blocks and shredding them yourself is a great way to get that gooey melted cheese we so desire. Also, put your cheese down all the way to the edges. We want to get it to melt down onto the sides of the pizza as it bakes, giving us some delicious cheesy crispiness. Next is some mild Italian sausage. Yes, this is the meaty pizza today. I think I ended up using about almost half a pound. You can use however much you want. I didn't do anything special to it other than just brown it in the pan. On top of that layer, we'll do 3 racing stripes of our pizza sauce. I found 1 jar was enough to get it covered. The jars look small when you first get them, but they hold a lot of sauce and enough to cover any type of pizza really. The next up is some cut pepperoni, specifically cut pepperoni so they'll crisp up and catch all that grease. We are not doing anything healthy here today, so don't even bother asking. Put as much as you'd like. Then into a 500-degree preheated oven and on the bottommost rack, closest to the heating element. And we'll let this sucker bake for about 12 to 15 minutes. You'll have to kind of play around with this time as every oven is kind of different. Some run hotter than their settings and some don't run as hot. And it's also your own personal preferences. Maybe you don't want it as crispy, or maybe you want it crispier. So I'd say 12 minutes is a great starting point, and then from there you can just always increase the time. Once the time is up, we'll get it out of the oven and we'll let it cool for just about a minute and then get it out of the pan because we don't want to leave it in there because it'll keep cooking. So get you a small spatula and just go around the edges, freeing the pizza from the sides. Then it should just slide right on out because remember, we oiled this bad boy to hell. Then I drizzled a couple lines of that Mike's Hot Honey on it, cut it into 8 square slices with this big ass pizza cutter, and it was time to dig in. And don't worry about these dark edges, that is some crispy goodness right there. If it bothers you, I guess you could back off the cooking time, but trust me, you're gonna love that. And that's it. We got a nice airy crust, chews good, and listen, play around with all the different types of doughs as I mentioned earlier in this episode. You can do longer proofing and all that and just see which dough you land on that you like. Whether it be taller or crispier, just have fun with it. And my poor choice today was just some good old white wine, nothing special. Hey, this is Poor Choices Kitchen. We have a Patreon link down in the description. $1 a month is all we ask for. Of course, you can donate as much as you want. And we have YouTube memberships, which is $2.99 because YouTube likes to take their cut. You can pick whichever one you want to subscribe to, but all that goes a long way in helping us do these recipes in these here inflated times. And hopefully over time, as the channel begins making money, I can maybe hire another editor and I can start doing more content per week and also start giving members and Patreons their own special content. It'll all come with time, but for right now, I appreciate any support you can give me, even if it's just sharing a video and subscribing. So enjoy this wonderful pizza. I'm sorry I made you have to pretty much buy a brand new kitchen, but I think it's all going to be worth it in the end. And I would love to hear how you did your pizza. Just because I did mine with the pepperoni and the hot honey doesn't mean you have to do it that way. So I would love to hear what you all do with yours. See you all next time.